Welcome to I'm Refocused Radio. We are here again, and today we have a true honor. We have our special guest speaker, trainer, and executive director, Dr. Joaquin E. Wallace. We're going to be talking about his recent book, Generational Wealth Begins with Generational Knowledge. It isn't just about money. It's about awareness plus mindset equals knowledge. And that is real change. This book shows how our financial habits are shaping the stories that we live, the traumas that we go through, and the beliefs that we are inherited. This is not just something that you read once and you understand life. This is a book that you have to use as a guide, and most likely, maybe like the Bible, we have to go back and kind of reread some things to really understand where you really are. It's not an abstract book. It's a book that hits you home where you are. So if you're tired of being lost, pick up this book. I'm serious. I got it right now. Pick it up and give it to someone. And the reason why I did all that for show is because this book, I read it, and it's definitely put me in a position to where I can really execute life on better terms with better tools and resources and better awareness. Because without awareness, you're just on the map roaming without a GPS with a signal. Anybody can have a car, but if you don't know where the heck you're going to end up anywhere that you're not supposed to be. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Wallace to the show, man. Appreciate you sending me a copy of the book to read. Thank you for your time, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. We spoke before we came on, and I can't wait for the listeners to delve into the things that you kind of told me as well. And I'm just looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, man. So let's get right into it. Walls in, walls out. That's inside the book, and that hit me too as well. How can a listener or viewer who's watching this episode kind of understand what that actually means when they spot their inside story versus the outside pressure?
Well, when you think about, walls in, walls out, it starts from your internal and external ecosystem in the book itself, which is stage one. And I firmly believe that, all of our relationship with money is based with walls inside the home. Learn helplessness, self-sabotage. All of the lessons that we've learned was from those inside of the walls. And our first financial fiduciaries were our parents, cousins, uncles, friends, neighbors, anyone they pretty much gave you unsolicited advice about money. Those were your first financial fiduciaries. Well, what's most important is walls out, because that's what we see outside of the doors, and that shapes us as well too. If what we see outside externally, the clothes people wear, fear of missing out, as they say now, what back in the day was keeping up with the Joneses, but all of those elements outside of our home combined with walls in shapes who we are, which creates your inherited financial narratives and our financial genetic code, which I'm sure we're going to get into.
And we are. And before we go to that bus stop, there's a inherited financial narrative that people play in their mind. In plain terms, break it down for us in elementary style. What is something that you believe contributes to wrecking people's good plans, especially when you think about inherited financial narratives?
Well, when you think about inherited financial narratives, those are all of the narratives that have been given to us without our permission. So oftentimes and not, we're carrying these narratives and we don't know why. We're carrying these messages, but we don't know why. And if you look at the financial genetic code, which basically suggests that you have your inherited financial narratives, those are the why, and then the action is the encoded financial behaviors. Those are the ones that the actions to what we do, which creates our financial genetic code, which is our trauma and our anxieties. But most of the time, we don't recognize what those are. And so in the book, I table 20 of those. One of my favorite ones is the scar tissue narrative that we carry with us. Something may have happened in the past financially, and we carry those wounds with us. Therefore, we're not able to move forward. Analysis by paralysis. We find that a lot. We find it really, if we're just looking at it from just a perspective on how many of us actually participate in qualified plans at work, 401ks, insurances, long-term care, those type of things we don't really participate in because of the scar tissue narrative that may have happened we've seen during our lifestyle. And so that can derail what we're trying to accomplish, which is ultimately financial well-being. We've been told we want to achieve generational wealth. Generational wealth isn't for you and I. Generational wealth is for those behind us. What you and I want to achieve is financial well-being, financial health, financial wealth. This is our soft landing, but we've been told something totally different. Financial literacy is on the same kind of level as well. Teaching financial literacy. Well, financial literacy, the way it's being taught, is more of a linear process. It's not holistic. It can be financial shaming as well. So with that being said, those tools that are being taught to us really is not allowing us to move forward in regards to what we're really trying to get to, which is stage 5, financial well-being.
And when you think about pain, trauma, you have examples in the book of people's testimonies. They're, roadblockers, if you will. And a lot of that comes with trauma. But what I took personally was the thing about trauma is, you know how people talk about sweeping dirt underneath the rug and you just kind of do it as a bad habit. And before you know it, you lift that rug up as a mountain of dirt. Well, that's how I feel about trauma sometimes. It shows up in habits. And it causes us to avoid what is important, what's necessary to tackle, if you will. And in result, it makes us lose control. And it puts us in a forever digging pit, if you will. And it's hard to get out the longer you stay in there.
Well, when you look at, again, our society, especially in the marginalized communities, what we're taught is to become rich, right? Rich is everything. We have songs that talk about get rich and die trying, right? Everything is surrounded about becoming rich, but not about wealth. Wealth is legacy, but wealth isn't sexy. Rich is sexy. So when you look at today's society, everything is in a microwave versus looking at it as long-term longevity. And what we're taught is that we want to become rich. Well, rich is transactional. Wealth is a legacy. And wealth built the correct way is important. But what we're missing is the knowledge piece. That's why generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. That's why the title of the book is the way it is, because it basically suggests that without having the knowledge, well, the wealth is going to be a challenge to ascertain. And we've seen it. We witnessed it. And we watched celebrities, stars that we know that have become pretty much wealthy, but was not able to transfer the wealth strategically. But those are 1%. What about the person that lives around the corner, next door, cousin, uncle, aunties, friends that you actually know that have passed on and their families are involved in probate and things of that nature because they was not able to transfer the wealth properly? Or let's look at it as how many people within the marginalized communities that we know that's taking care of our parents because not having a long-term care plan in place, not having life insurance when they do pass on. Inheritance within our community is definitely low because of this. We have these traumas and anxieties, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, the scar tissue narrative. Something may have happened earlier in our lives we witnessed and seen, so we don't really trust the system. Although the wound has healed, but we definitely do carry it as well. And as I know myself personally, I've received cuts on my body. And although it's healed, but I can look and tell you exactly when it happened, how it happened, where it happened. And I always made sure not to do that again, right? Because I don't want to go through that pain. And that's what we go through in our communities.
Speaking of ending that cycle, you also touched in the book about reprogramming, your present and additional thinking about healing, that healing process. You also mentioned that healing must come before wealth. So you also have a 3-step reboot ritual. How can someone who's listening to this, I'm sure you might help some of this to make sure they go out and read the book, but what's some of the things you can share with us when it comes to rebooting that healing process, allowing us to attack those triggers that are preventing us from getting to the next level.
That's a great point. So if we look at the model itself, it's 7 stages, but we'll go over the first 3. So stage 1 is our internal external ecosystem, walls in and walls out. Stage 2 is our financial genetic code, trauma, anxiety. Stage 3 is financial healing. This is where we have to reprogram our financial genetic code, which is a byproduct of stage 1. One way that you can start that reprogramming is first have to identify and recognize that you do carry these inherited financial narratives. What are these triggers? What prompts you to act the way you do, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to give yourself grace. We are so quick to point out our deficiencies and what we've done wrong. What the book basically suggests is, regardless of what happened in the past, you have an opportunity today to right the ship, if so to speak. That's one of the most difficult aspects, because if I know that I can make a change today, I am not really holding myself for the decisions that I made prior in my lifetime, because a lot of it is lack of knowledge, not knowing. Mm-hmm. Right? Know it better, we do better. But at the same time, we don't know. So the first thing is, what triggers you? We need to know that. What are your inherited financial narratives? Second thing is, give yourself grace. And the third thing is, take one of the narratives that you have and try to reprogram it and reframe it. So in the book, I table 20, as you know, and each one has the actual definition, the behavioral aspect, and then the affirmation. Give yourself the affirmation. Talk to yourself. Make sure. Don't try to do everything all at one time. Take one, write it down, understand, say, well, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. One of the narratives that retirement isn't for me. Well, why is that? Because in our communities, we may not know anyone who has actually retired. Yeah. So if I don't know anyone who's actually retired, then when mentioning retire, I say, well, I don't really know anyone who's actually retired, so that's not for me. But that was in the past. You have a chance now to reprogram that. Well, the first thing I need to do is participate in any of the retirement vehicles that are available at my job. That's the first part of reprogramming. The third phase of that is saying, I am worthy of retiring. I do deserve to retire. And if you can take that approach, now you're acknowledging, you're recognizing, and then you have an action plan. So again, we talked about the financial genetic code. You have the why, and then you have the action. Inherited financial narratives are your why. The encoded financial behaviors is your action. Now you can create your own new and improved financial genetic code, because as we know, everyone has a financial genetic code. Everybody is different. That's why financial literacy, the way it's being taught, is being taught in a vacuum, meaning that everyone is the same, which we know that's not the case.
And like I said earlier, I'm going to hold this book again. Here's you go get yourself a copy. But like I said earlier, this book is so heavy that you can't just read it once. It's almost like a study guide. It's like if you get stumped, okay, let me go back and read on this part because it's said this and that. Let me reread that, because it's more like a tool that you can just keep using to help shape you as you're making better progress with better decision making. Because like I said, a lot of people talk about trauma, but if you really think about it, it's personal. You know, it's like your fingerprint. Like only you can really talk about whatever happened to you that caused the pain. So that means only you can do the hard work and actually read something through that's going to help you unpack that. Because unless you understand your feelings, you know, your lack of knowledge, your lack of awareness, you won't really understand what you actually are doing that's contributing to the negative experience. Because it's not something you do and you just turn over overnight. It's a process.
You know, one thing that I want the listeners to understand, in particular into relationships. So if you're in a relationship with an individual, both of you come from two different stage ones. So understand that's heavy. Your internal external ecosystem is different from your partner, spouse, friend, whomever. Then what does that suggest? Well, you have a different financial genetic code. Your anxieties and traumas are different. Therefore, there is no healing because no one talks about it. But we know, based on human relationships, that money is the most divisive piece in relationships, whether it's friendships, partnerships, marriages, businesses. The one area that can diffuse a friendship is money, simply because everyone comes from a different financial genetic code. Therefore, if you understand that, then you can give people grace because everyone's different. But these are conversations, in particular, if you're married, these are conversations that do not happen. And so what triggers you maybe don't trigger your partner. You know, what's irrational for you may be rational for that person. What's rational for that person may be irrational to you because their financial genetic codes are different. But no one really knows that, in particular, when you get into a relationship. Business partnership, same thing. A lot of friendships have been ruined due to money, but that's the one conversation that we don't talk about at all.
It's funny. It's like the metaphor I said earlier about sweeping the dirt underneath the rug. You just get comfortable doing it because it's a quick fix. But what you don't know is eventually it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a situation where you have to actually tackle. And it would have been a lot easier if you tackled it a long time ago versus you had that bad habit of just doing the easy shortcuts. Because in our minds, we think it's an easy shortcut, but we're not understanding the amount of impact it will have on years later. And that kind of goes into, before we get to the planning your future in chapters 5 through 6, let's talk about budget basics versus builder moves. What is the bridge that people watching, listening can use to get from understanding budget requirements before they are able to be in position to start building wealth for their themselves?
You know, that's a great topic. So, you know, there's a lot surrounding budget, right? So I mentioned the 50-30-20 rule that's been mentioned throughout that many people always refer to. But here's my take on budgeting. First and foremost, when you mention the word budget, in my opinion, you're lumping it into the same category as a diet. Because once I mention the word diet, therefore I'm looking for a beginning and an ending. If I'm mentioning the word budget, I'm looking at a beginning and an ending. My theory is don't use the word budget. Don't use the word diet. You would say, I'm changing my lifestyle. If I'm changing my lifestyle, yes, I can give myself grace for things that I like to do or like to eat or like to purchase, but I'm changing my lifestyle over time gradually. One of the most challenging things that we find is paying yourself first. That's essential. We need to pay ourselves first. But it's a challenge because it's a process. It's hard. And so what I always say, let's give yourself realistic expectations versus unrealistic expectations. It's like trying to go out and run the mile and say, okay, I want you to go out and run the mile tomorrow in 7 minutes. And you've never ran before. Well, that's unrealistic expectations, right? I have to work towards that. The same thing in regards to building money, paying yourself first. Try to be as consistent as possible. Pick a number out. Consistency. As I say in the book, if you're consistently consistent, your outcome will consistently be consistent. Yeah. So I always recommend to my clients, listen, 10% of your money should go to yourself first. Pay yourself first. Many will say, well, why I paid my tithes on Sunday. I said, well, you get paid on Friday. So Friday, you take 10% and pay yourself first. Take care of your disposables, and then everything else comes from there. Because if I have $1,000, I pay myself first, that's $100 I'm putting in. If I don't pay myself first, I pay my disposables, which may be $500 to throw a number out, and I $300 for wants, well, that's $200, and now 10% of $200 is $20. And so if you take, you know what I'm saying? So pay yourself first. That's the first thing you need to do. Hold yourself accountable. Then everything becomes easier, becomes habit. But for the most part, based on our inherited financial narratives and our coded financial behaviors, we say, well, we can't do that. I have to take care of my disposables first, then my wants, and then whatever I have left, I pay myself. No, you need to reverse that. Pay yourself first, then do your disposables, and then your discretionaries at that point, because this is called discretionary for a reason. You don't have to do that. Those are your needs and your wants. And then you have a better idea of understanding what you need to do. Another thing that I would say, or my clients, I would say, take 90 days of your bank statements, 90 days, average your wants and your needs, highlight your wants in green and your needs in yellow. Total them up at that point, divided by the total amount of money you're putting into the bank. That's going to give you a percentage. You take that percentage over 3 months, it's going to give you an average. That is your true mechanism you use. 50, 30, 20 may not work for you because basically where you live at, things of that nature. You may be 60, 20, 10, to 60, 20, 20. That may be realistic for you. So don't get caught up on 50, 30, 20. Do the average, 90 days, figure it out, needs and wants, highlight, divide it into, that gives you an actual percentage over 3 months. Then you know, well, I'm at a 65% needs. Okay, I'm this point wants. But here's the thing, are you paying yourself? Because remember, 50, 30, 20 to 20% is paying yourself. Well, 20% may be unrealistic, maybe 10%. That's why I say 10% is more realistic versus 20%, because then you get frustrated. And what happens if you don't reach it? You stop, and then you get frustrated, because again, it's like a diet. If I'm not able to meet my objectives, what's the first thing I do? I stop, I'm off the diet, versus saying I'm going to change my lifestyle.
Yeah. Once again, listen to Refocused Radio, watching this online, talking to our guest today, Joaquin Wallace. Go to his website, drjwallace.com. We're talking about his book. I'm going to keep showing it because I got it. Go get his book, Generational Wealth Begins with Generational Knowledge. I know this wasn't on my to-do list, on my questionnaire list, but just responding naturally to what we've been talking about. Let's touch real quick about debt, because debt is something that I believe most people are honest. It happens. And it's a matter of how are you going to adjust your lifestyle to attack something that you have an opportunity to, while you have time, before it's unbearable to do. Let's talk about a little bit about that. Someone who's watching or listening, and they maybe younger or, mid-age, whatever, but what would you say when it comes to discipline, to tackling prioritizing things on your to-do list with financial hiccups, hardship, when it comes to debt? Because that is something that ties up a lot of resources for people who are listening and watching us.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, debt can be a challenge. But for the most part, debt is based on you have choices. And you made the choice to have debt. How do you manage debt? Well, you have the snowball effect. They have so many mechanisms to help pay down debt. But here's the thing. We look at debt in terms of credit, which is important. If you have credit, because debt is credit, one thing that you want to focus on is make sure that your utilization rate is 30%, period. 30% is so important. So what does that mean? You have a portfolio of $10,000 worth of credit, debt, if you will. You want to make sure that you're about $3,000. That's 30%, right? So you always want to be 30% of that number, because that's what drives your credit report. However, what happens oftentimes is that many of us believe that we need to pay it all at one time. And I say, no, that's not how you want to do that. You want to be strategic about how you're paying your debt. Now, a couple of things you could do. You could start paying your debt off, take your credit cards, put them in an envelope, and don't use them till you get them to 30%. You have to be consistent and intentional about that. That's so important. Many of us don't understand that. So in the book, I reference financial passengers, which is so important. Many of us as parents, and we have children, our children are our financial passengers. So think of it this way. We're in a car, driving the car. You're the driver. You have the passenger. As passengers, they're just watching the driver. So if you're wilding out, driving crazy, most likely the passengers, when they get their license, are going to do the same thing. Eventually, at some point, you're going to have to give the keys to the car to that passenger. And then that passenger is going to react and do the things they've seen that the drivers do. That's the same thing you find with credit and debt. We have watched our parents and how they live their lives, and it's a microcosm of how we're acting and doing as well. So we have to be very conscious of that as parents, to really be aware and intentional that if I have my kids, I cannot live loosely, because they're watching and seeing that as well too. Those are your inherited financial narratives. So in regards to your encoded financial behaviors, your action. So in regards to debt, you have to tackle it as a job. So think of it this way. If you have 5 credit cards, I always say 5 credit cards, you have 5 jobs. Your job is to make sure that they're 30%. I'm not saying 0%, I'm saying 30%, because you still have to use your credit too, because financial institutions are going to give you credit when you have credit. You have good credit, you have bad credit. So yeah, you can pay all your credit off. That's fine too. You have interest rates. I understand that. But for the most part, you have to use your credit card to get credit. So you have to manage the debt as a job. And many of us do a poor job of that because they don't look at it as a job. So you have 10 credit cards, you have 10 jobs plus the one you're working. You have to manage it that way. You have to be intentional about that and understand the true ramifications of it all.
That's real good. I'm glad I asked that, because I think that really, like I said, I'm going to keep saying it. This book is not something that you just read one time. You know, maybe you're not Shemaiah, but for me personally, this can be a book I see as a tool. You know, whenever you need a refresher, you're going to read something about it. I mean, we do all the time. Whatever motivates us, whatever inspires us, whatever kind of keeps us, you know, held accountable to what we're actually doing. This book is it, man. I'm telling you, it's a good tool, especially if you're young. I can't emphasize this enough. If you're a young person watching this or listening to this episode, share with all your friends, man. Like, for real. Get started early, because if you wait too late, I don't think you can wait too late unless you just quit too long. But if you're young, take this opportunity, get this book and share with your friends, because this, I believe, if I had this in middle school, high school, oh boy, like life would be a little bit different, man. But this is a good, timely book, I believe.
You know, I want to add something to that, because I've been asked a lot. And so I'm creating a how do you read this book? Because it's a true mechanism, steps on how do you read the book. And I love how you mentioned that you have to continue to go over it. It's not a one sit read. It's one of those books that you will constantly be going over and over and over again. Well, I didn't get that right. Well, let me go back. Oh, what did he say about this? Let me go back. It's a great book because it's a tool set, as you mentioned earlier. And it was geared towards 2 populations. It was geared towards the 5 financial professionals that are out there, as well as the regular person like you and I, the thousandaire, the billionaire, the hundredaire, the nowhere, right? So there are all those heirs that are out there. So when you look at it from that perspective, the 5 financial professionals, plus one, I'll throw another one in as well too, but you have the financial educator, you have the financial therapist, you have the financial advisor, planner, counselor, and I'm going to throw a financial coach in as well. I really believe that those individuals, from what I've seen in terms of the comments on Amazon, is that they loved the book because it allowed them to do self-inventory on themselves, because I firmly believe that each one of those 6 financial professionals, unbeknownst to us, unbeknownst to them, transfers their financial genetic code to their clients.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important to recognize, because I think in order for you to be good at what you do, you have to first have a true understanding of who you are and why you're in the business. Because the book basically suggests that if you're a financial professional, you have to take a servant leadership model, not a transactional model, which is totally different. Now, from the person on the other side, like the regular person, it basically suggests, say, you know what? I can give myself grace. I didn't know that. I wasn't aware that that conversation that I had back in when I was a young person, how it impacts me today. You know, one of the sections we talk about in the book, chapter 2, is when I spoke about my own journey with my parents being on welfare. The colored money, I'm sure you read that, the colored money, you know, I didn't want to spend anything. I stand in the back of the line, wait till the line was finished, use the money, then leave. Right. And so
everyone talking about each other.
Right. Everybody talking about each other. But, you know, that's a true statement. But my wife was reading a book by Jamel Wallace, the journalist. And she mentioned her episode with food stamps. And the same thing that she said, and my wife said, I didn't realize that that's such an impactful thing. I said, no, that is real. If you had to go in with the colored money, the monopoly money, you would stand in the back, wait till you leave, buy it, run out the store. Everyone's talking about you, but everyone's on it, right? Everybody, now they have the EBT cards, but everybody was on that system. Those are financial traumas, inherited financial narratives, encoded financial behaviors that we carry with us. And I'm sure when you went through the 20 that I tabled in the book, you say, okay, I know about that one, the financial matrix, you know, the education solves everything narrative. We know that's not the case, right? So all of these narratives come into play and we carry them on unbeknownst to us. This is why we have the relationship we have with money. And this is why we have the relationship with money with other people. And as I mentioned earlier, money, they say it can divide anybody, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody. Money can be the divisive measure.
The other thing that stuck out to me was it kind of helps you appreciate what your parents did. And what I mean by that is the sacrifices that they made, because if they did have money falling off the money tree, they knew how to make the money stretch. And it also makes you, because you mentioned relationships, it also makes you kind of step back a little bit and say, oh, wow, yeah, I remember that growing up. Dang, man, that's what's up. Because you start to really appreciate reflecting on what sacrifices were made, you know, to put you as the next generation in a position to succeed. And I think a lot of times people can forget that, you know, especially if they had good parents, because obviously can't speak for everybody, but from my own 2 cents, we had parents who made that money stretch and they really made it their priority to invest in their kids. You now see the sacrifice that they made to make that happen. And I believe that is another lens that the book illustrates as well.
I appreciate that. You know, and one area that really pleased me is that the book itself is a self-published book. I was turned down by a lot of the other companies, and I was really hurt about that. I was like, man, why no one wants me to write about my book? And they said, we have books that were similar in genre. I was like, no, I don't think so. But again, it was the best thing that it ever could have happened. Within 30 days, it was an Amazon bestseller with no really hard marketing supporting it. So that let you know that the information in the book is really good and really timely. And I opened it basically by suggesting that in terms of your why generational wealth is important is because as a first generational person, I don't know if that who you are, but that's who I am. I'm first generation in terms of wealth in my family anyway. 10% typically 10% of the money that I've earned, the assets I've earned, in most cases would be for my grandchildren, 30% for my children. Well, that's an important figure to know because we've seen it so much in our community, in particular in the marginalized communities. Now, the book itself has a marginalized lens, but everybody can benefit from it. The model is colorblind. Yeah. But me being a person of color, obviously, I want to write it from this perspective. And I really felt that in regards to the mechanisms and the construction of the book itself, it's really the only book in my mind that captures everything, involves everything, but it's not a sales tool, which was important. It was more so, it's not a self-help book as well. It's basically suggesting, let me tell you why you have your relationship with money the way it is and how it has impacted you thus far. But don't worry about that. You can start over today to create the financial footprints to get to stage 7 for generational wealth. But for you and I, we need to focus on stage 5 financial well-being. But before we get there, we got to go back and uncover stages 1, 2, 3, which then allow us to get to stage 4. Because as you remember, in chapter 4, I open it up basically saying, you've made it. You've got through all of the healing aspect, right? All of the heavy stuff now. Now let's start putting tools in place to help you get to stage 5, which is financial well-being, looking at financial stage 4 edification in terms of inclusion and literacy.
And you really touch on a lot of stuff with policies, with insurance, and you explained that very well. And stuff like that, I believe you got to go back and reread some of that stuff, especially when you think about retirement and what is your legacy and what would that look like? Because like I said, it's a situation where you have to kind of revisit. Okay, this is what I did. Okay, let's go back and review some more. I mean, that's just me personally. Someone else might read it and be like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. Well, good for you, man. I'm happy for you. But someone like me, man, I have to reread a lot of things. And I think that's okay, because if you're not truthful, then you're just like the analogy I said in the beginning. You're just sweeping dirt underneath the rug. And you know, like we joked about earlier about, you know, using those monopoly money, and you're making fun of everybody. But the real joker is the one who looks in the mirror and never actually attacked what was affecting them. And I feel like this book also helps you identify who you are in this. Because until you know that question mark and answer that truthfully, you're not going to be able to go to the next steps. It's almost like someone who's assigned an assignment in college or whatever school, high school, and you just don't do it right. You're just going to show up for the exam. Well, good luck. Because eventually you might skate through, but not for long. Because shortcuts only work in video games. Because when it's all said and done, you can turn that game off. But in life, you can't turn the life off. Like it's not a video game. You can't just restart it. You get one shot to live your life. And that's the major difference in reading this book. It is really hitting home that if you start taking life a little bit more seriously by understanding the lack that you may have when it comes to finances, that is really going to help you shape a better future versus you treat like a video game and there's all these cheat codes and, you know, you're just going to figure out one day, like in 30 minutes, you're going to be able to figure out something that you have delayed for decades. That's not how it's going to work, man.
Well, you know, one area that I really wanted to do in the book as well, as you know, each chapter has self-assessments. So it allows you to go through each chapter, answer the questions. Therefore, you're going to learn all about what your financial genetic code is. And so that was important. because I just didn't want to read. And in another area, before I start writing a book, I mentioned I was going to write the book, and because I have my podcast, people say, you need to write a book. So I said, okay, well, I'm thinking about it. And I did a lot of fact finding, a lot of focus groups, so to speak, with seminars I was doing with individuals. And I said, well, how should I write the book? I didn't want to write it to academia because I didn't want to turn people away, but I didn't want to dumb it down. Yeah. And the consensus was, write it as you would write it. Force us to pick up a thesaurus, force us to pick up a dictionary, because if you do that, that will make us better, bigger, better, faster, and stronger. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll do that. So I didn't, that was difficult because I didn't know how I wanted to write it. If I write it to academia, then it'll turn people off. If I dumb it down, people won't take it serious. Yeah. So I said, well, I'm just going to write it as I would actually speak, and I can use the $10 words when I need to, right? But I wanted to, speak it in my own language, in a language that we could understand, and have it read extremely well. A lot of the compliments that I'm getting from people that have read the book, it reads well, good content, has some humor in it as well. You can tell you're from the marginalized side of the community. You're just like us, so to speak. But the podcast episodes, the transcripts kind of help as well too, because it gives you a different lens from professionals that's in the field and regular folk as well. This is their struggles that they've been able to achieve. When you have professionals that's cited in the transcripts who's showing their vulnerability, to me, that is huge, because I may have a PhD, or I may be a CFP here, but I've had struggles as well too. And it's important to know that no one's perfect, but at the end of the day, it's not a sales book. And I love how you said that you have to continue to go back over and over. Me personally, I firmly believe that if you're serious about making a change in regards to your relationship with money, this book or books need to be in your home. What I'm finding, there's a lot of families are doing family readings with the book. Wow. They're gifting it with family members, and they're meeting like every Friday, going over a chapter.
This is important.
Right, it's important. We're going to start from ground one. I have one of my students who's in my class who purchased a book with his family. He asked his daughters, what's your first recollection? What is your first memory of money? And it was, and she told him. And so that allowed him to say, wow, I need to make some changes. But again, he's only a byproduct of his environment. Mm-hmm. This is what he's learned, right? He's learned his inherited financial narratives have been passed down unbeknownst to him without his permission. And he's been carrying it for years upon years. Now he has a chance to stop, make a change his trajectory as well, understand him and his wife's, financial genetic code, help them to go forward to better shape their family going forward. But again, to help them too, because they're trying to get to their stage 5, which is financial well-being.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online. Talking to our guest today, Dr. Joaquin Wallace. Go to his website, drjwallace.com, and get a copy. You know what I'm about to do. I'm about to bring that book in. Get a copy of the book, Generational Wealth Begins with Generational Knowledge. In closing, wrapping things up, one thing I want to say to our audience, and I'm going to be transparent on the show myself, and that is, I was never a straight A student growing up. Never. Okay. I was abstract. I was into the arts. I was into sound. I was the guy that colored outside the lines. I was like, man, y'all ain't about to hold me back. I'm about to be creative here in this space. The reason why I have to go back to the book is because that's what some people got to do. Now, some people might be straight A students and they read this thing and blah, 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 X amount of days, and they set for life. I want to hit that home. This book also teaches you to not be ashamed of where you are, but be open to where you can go. Because if you're not open to where you can go, then you're never going to do anything. It's like life. You're going to start something, then you're going to quit. You're going to start something, then you're going to quit. You're never going to, like you said earlier, be consistent. If you're consistent, you get consistent results. So if you're consistently lazy, then you're going to have those consistent, lazy results. If you're consistently disciplined, sooner or later, that's going to pay off. Sooner or later, it's going to rub off for you. Sooner or later, people will be looking at you like, man, you kind of different, man. You walk a little different. You talk a little different. What you eating, man? What you exercise? What you doing? Hey, yo, for real. I'm real talk. It's a tool. I mean that for real. Like, it really is a tool. And I know there's many books out there you can read, but I wouldn't waste my time interviewing Mr. Wallace today if I think it was valuable. And here's another thing. We had another interview a long time ago, and I'm glad I never released that one because it's a prime example of what happens if you try to take shortcuts. Because when I first met Mr. Wallace, I was just going to watch my way through and just do like a routine interview and ask some cookie cutter questions, get some cookie cutter answers, and call it a day. He had a hard conversation after the show and said, hey, man, we really want to help people. I want you to read that book. And I'm glad I did. Because this episode, this interview was fire. The last one, no one will ever see that live day. Because it was just a routine. And I want to harp that. I want to harp on that and push that home is because I look at that as a metaphor with life. You cannot treat life as in, I'm just going to go through the motions. Well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. No, you got to do something about it. And I love the whole mindset and idea that when you really focus on the discipline of what does it really take for you to get to where you could be, then that's when the magic happens. Because if you just fluff your way through, then the only person you're hurting is yourself. Because if you try to make everyone think, oh yeah, no. Sooner or later, they're going to find out. They're going to read in between the lines and be like, hey, there's a bit of disconnection right here and something not making sense. It's because you got to stop fluffing and start connecting. So I suggest you get a copy of his book. In closing, I'll let you have the last words. What do you want to say to our audience?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I appreciate you being transparent with that conversation, because that's a conversation that when people bring me onto their podcast, in particular, since the book has been released, I would always say to them, we can do an interview, but until you read the book, it will not make sense. And I've rescheduled like 5 podcasts because of that. Literally, they say, okay, I'll read the book, because I think it gives you a better sense of where your feet are at that moment. And it'll allow you to say, well, from my perspective, this is why this book is important. And you can champion the book. You can stick the flag, you draw the line, put the flag down. This is why I'm championing this book, because I want to help people. Yeah, which is so important. And I will say this, there's so much information that's out there today. The market is oversaturated, and it's a fragmented market. The barriers to entry are low, meaning that there's a lot of people talking about this genre right now. This is very hot. Financial literacy, generational wealth. I wanted to make sure that what differentiated my book from all the others, one is to be evergreen, that will never be out of play. You can take this book from 20 years from today, it's still going to be applicable. 2, I wanted to use language in the book that hasn't been used before. As you notice, there's nothing it's no trendy language being used in the book. All the language is used is all mine. I created it, everything, inherited financial narratives, encoded financial behaviors, the financial genetic code, which people love the financial genetic code because it actually says, okay, that makes sense. You can see our shirt, financial genetic code. You guys want one, let me know about that. But, it's a way to say, this is how you differentiate your product from those that are in the market. Because it's a very competitive market. I mean, it is what it is. Why are people going to purchase your stuff versus someone else's? So I had to make sure, especially of being of color, it was important that the book be written from our lens to our marginalized people. But again, everybody can benefit, but the stories, the language. Yes, it will resonate more in the marginalized communities. I try to bring in authors that probably wasn't too familiar with before, that are of color, as well as we cited 400 references in the book itself. So it was, to me, it was a well-written book, well-constructed book to be used for years to come versus a one-sitting read, as you mentioned earlier.
So once again, before we officially sign off, I really seriously want people to take some time to get this book and take your time with it, man. Especially, I'm talking to my creative people out there, all my tech nerds and all the people who think abstractly and all that stuff, all the creative minds out there. Take your time with this, man. It's not how fast you can finish this book. It's how many connections you can get. All right, how many things can you get from this book that's really going to be a seed planted in your mind? Because too many times I feel like we are in this competition that I got to be the fastest, I got to be the greatest. And if that works for you, that works for you. But I like to take my time. And I feel like when you do that, it creates opportunities that you probably never experience if you just fluff it. And I probably said that word 10,000 times, but this is so crucial, man. Do not shortchange yourself by trying to present a false identity. Be real where you are. Because once you meet that person, then you can begin the new journey to a brighter future. But it starts with you being truly honest and say, you know what? I'm gonna have to take time with this. I'm gonna have to revisit that. Whoa, that was heavy, man. The words he using in this chapter, I gotta stop and find out what the heck going on. I gotta test myself and kind of review this before I get to the next chapter. And I feel like when you do that, man, life, I say magic, and the reason I say that is because I believe life and the opportunities that are meant for anybody to go after, it really starts to go in play when you take the tools that are inside this book and you start using it in ways how you look at life and the way how you look at yourself. And most importantly, what is your next move? And with that, I want to say to my good friend, Dr. Wallace, appreciate your time being on the show today, man.
Appreciate you, man. Looking forward to the episode. Thank you again for having me. And thanks for doing it the second time, which is better than the first time. No one will see that. That's in the can. Now we're working on this one here.
You know what, man? I was trying to look for it today, and
it's so far in the can, you can't find it.
Someone shredded it and put gasoline and lit a match. So it's gone. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.